This begins the part 2 discussion of the assignment 6 solution that I came up with. So we're back here on the home page, and we just got done looking at the Find Homes area and saw how that worked in code. Let's go look at the other part, the guest book and mortgage calculator. So here we are in guest calc. So let's go look at that code first. Guest calc is right over here. So again, we have the relative referencing because this is running in the assignment 6 files subdirectory from the root. Likewise with the images. Let's move down. We are building the form. This is just standard HTML. It's the same HTML I used last time. I didn't change it. Now here's where something different happens. Instead of getting an information out of a file before, for the options of the city, remember it says city, where do you want to reside? And I put a hyphen there before, and literally that'll be the first option. But after that, I want to look at the database, and I have a city database. It really only has one column, so it's pretty simple. It just has the name. I select the name, that's the city name, from the city table and order it by the name, so it shows up in the list. So as we go down here and we do the standard select results and et cetera, which you've seen several times now, we get the name and we build the option. Option value equals name, and it's real important to get those ticks, those single quotes as a part of the string. See how it sits inside the quote here? So we put the name so it's surrounded by that. You know, if we don't use those ticks, it'll work fine if it's just one word with no spaces. But if you have a city like New York or New Orleans or something like that, it won't work. You'll drop it off at the space. And so it's very important to have those ticks around the value. So here's the II, which is what I used for the counter in the for loop. And that'll allow us to put 1 colon and then the city name. So it's 1, 2, 3. I numbered them just for the heck of it. Here at the end, I print the output display. So that prints what I built up, which were the options. So this is all PHP, and it's all from a table. Now, what do I do here now? I close the select option list, and we move forward. So now we get the comments area and the little link that takes you to the view guestbook. Notice that the view guestbook is now inside this folder. So let's move on. When I press the button to add to the guestbook, I guess we should take another look at that. When I put the information in here and press the submit button, let's go back. I'm going to call this program, Assignment 6 Add to Guestbook. And this gets tricky. Same business up here, relative referencing on the images on the cascading style sheets. Let's move down. Common functions, I'm including them again. I do validation. Now I made that a function on the common function, so it's doing the validations there. So let's move down. Now this is fun. I have a little comment here, and why I have this comment here is I figured out what I really needed the insert statement to look like if I typed it in interactively. Remember? I've got the word null here. I think I actually generated this out of PHP MyAdmin. I showed you how to do that earlier. Null is the guest ID, which is the automatic numeric primary key. So I have a phone number or an email. If I didn't have an email, you just put the word null there. You don't put it in quotes or anything. It could be lowercase as well. That will make it null, and it's a nice placeholder. So I have all the data here, and this reminds me that I gotta get these ticks around the non-numeric data, either date data or string data. If something's truly a number, and if I had number of bed, baths, or whatever, and it was truly a number, then I don't have to wrap it up in single ticks. In fact, usually you do not. So I broke it up this way just to make it a little bit easier to read. I insert into guestbook, and I did 2 columns at a time. Last name, first name, phone, email, city, contact date, and comments. And notice, if you will, let's go back here for a second, that the contact date behaves like a string for purposes of inserting. So don't forget that. Now I'm going to actually pass the values. See, I've got the beginning, the keyword values, and the opening parenthesis statement. So I'm building up these ticks. Tick, last name, tick, comma, another tick. So this is one string between that. First name, close tick, comma. And we keep moving on that way. It can get confusing when you have so many columns to deal with, but you've got to be careful to get that right. Now, here, if the contact choice was a phone, that was something that they entered in the form, the actual HTML. Then I write the phone number out, tick in the phone, and I put null for the email. Else, if that means they picked email, I put null for the phone, and I put the phone or email in the email spot. So that's something to pay attention to. City contact date, again covered with ticks, as well as the comments. Now, IDU results, which I mentioned was the different function that I created to handle the insert, update, and delete statements. Just returns, prints out the number of rows. We didn't actually need to print that. It actually showed at the very top there, but that showed me that it was one row that was affected. So we go down, display new page. This is just the same as we had before. It comes up and gives you a little thank you message, yada yada, shows you what you entered, and the end of the page on that one. Let's look at the View Guest Book. The View Guest Book, of course, if we go back to the program real quick, and we click on that, we see a nice little table here, just like we did before. But again, this time we're getting everything out of a database, not from a file. So I'm in View Guest Book. I'm building a table just like I did before. And now here, instead of a file, I've got to select. I select all those columns, and I have to get all those columns down here in the for statement and put them into variables. And then I go through the whole business of the alternate rows. It's the same code you had in assignment 4. And I write out TDs. Now you have to be careful here. If the phone number is empty, remember the phone number or the email can be empty. I put in NA because it doesn't apply. That's not the way they want it to be contacted. So email, city, contact date. Again, if comments are empty, I make it a non-breaking space. That's the symbol. Ampersand NBSP semicolon. You got to put it all there. And that'll make the table look correct. It won't look kind of funny in its display if you put a non-breaking space in it. The last but not least is the mortgage calculation, and I didn't change that. It's validations are there and the calculations are there. It's exactly the same as it was before. The only difference is, of course, is I have different CSS. It's all relative indexing, and up here, and then also in the logo. All the logos are going to assignment 6 now. So it was a very minor change to that file. There was another CSS file here, this is King 6. So just make sure that all your IDs of your divs that you need to format are properly put into King 6. It's very close to King 4, but there's maybe another div or two that you need to deal with. That ends part 2 of my solution for assignment 6.